Greetings, students! In this presentation, I will be giving you some tips for reading comprehension. But first, what do you do when you read? Now, you're probably thinking, ugh, reading is so boring. Reading makes me sleepy. I just go into my phone. Or, I actually love reading. Well, I got some news for you. Reading can be very fun. To better understand something you read, make connections. What does this story remind you of? How is this story similar or different to others? How can you relate this story to your own life or to the world? Read the story aloud as many times as you deem necessary. Ask questions. What? Who? Where? When? Why? How? Summarize the story. Which events were the most important? Talk about the story with your parents, friends, and/or classmates. Search for the words that you do not know or investigate about whatever you do not understand. Remember, context is important. Use your 5 senses. What does something look like? What does something sound like? What does something smell like? What does something taste like? What does something feel like? And now, a reading of Gonzalo. The older you are, the younger you get when you move to the United States. 2 years after my father and I moved here from Guatemala, I could speak English. I learned it on the playground and watched lots of TV. Don't believe what people say. Cartoons make you smart. With my father, he worked all day in a kitchen with Mexicans and Salvadorans. His English was worse than a kindergartner's. He would only buy food at the bodega down the block. Outside of there, he lowered his eyes and tried to get by on mumbles and smiles. He didn't want strangers to hear his mistakes, so he used me to make phone calls and to talk to the landlady and buy things in stores where you had to use English. He got older. Then my younger brothers and mother and Tío Juan came north and joined us. Tío Juan was the oldest man in his pueblo, but here he became a little baby. He was a farmer, but here he could not work. He could sit out in the plaza and talk, but there are not any plazas here. If you sit outside in public, some gang driving by might use you for target practice. He could not understand TV, so he wandered around the apartment to himself, just like a kid in diapers. One morning, he wandered outside and down the street. My mother practically fainted. He does not speak Spanish or English, just an Indian language. I finally found him standing in front of the beauty salon, looking through the glass at a woman with a dryer over her head. He must have wondered what weird planet he had moved to. I took him home, holding his hand, the way you would with a 3-year-old. Since then, I'm supposed to babysit him after school. One afternoon, I was watching TV, getting smart. Suddenly, I look up. He was gone. I checked the halls on all 5 floors of the apartment house. I ran to the street. He was not in the bodega or the pawn shop. I called his name. I could imagine my mother's face when she found out he had fallen through a manhole or been run over. I turned the corner, looking for a white straw hat he always wore. 2 blocks down, I saw it. I ran down the sidewalk and found him standing in front of a vacant lot, making gestures to a man with a shovel. I took his hand, but he pulled me through the trash and into the lot. I recognized the man with the shovel. He was the janitor at my old school. He had a little garden planted. Different shades of green leaves were coming up in rows. Tío Juan was smiling and trying to tell him something. The man could not understand him and finally went back to digging. I turned Tío Juan around and led him home. That night, he told my mother all about it. She was the only one who could understand him. When she got home from work the next day, she asked me to take him back there. I did. He studied the sun, then the soil. He felt it, then smelt it, then actually tasted it. He chose a spot not too far from the sidewalk. My mother bought him 4 packets of seeds. I cleared the trash. He turned the soil. I wish we were far from the street, and I was praying that none of my friends or girlfriends or enemies saw me. Tio Juan did not even notice people. He was totally absorbed in the work. He showed me exactly how far apart the rows should be and how deep. He could not read the words on the seed packets, but he knew from the pictures what seeds were inside. He poured them into his hand and smiled. He seemed to recognize them like old friends. Watching him carefully sprinkling them into the doughs he had made, I realized that I did not know anything about growing food and that he knew everything. I stared at his busy fingers, then his eyes. They were focused, not far away or confused. He had changed from a baby back into a man. Here are some videos you can watch if you want to learn more about vocabulary building and reading comprehension. That was all for now. Thanks for watching.